Hi, everyone. This is your host, Michelle, and you're listening to the Mindfull podcast, the show that aims to break the stigma associated with mental health. Today, we'll be talking about drug and alcohol addiction, the struggles of staying sober, and the full road to recovery, with Mike Lasar, who is an Alumni Coordinator at a detox center in Florida. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mindfull podcast. Today, we have Mike. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So your Monday going so far? Great.
So far, it's a Monday.
Regular Monday.
Regular Monday. Now I'm here. So this
Amazing.
is really exciting.
Great.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. For those who don't know you, do you mind telling our audience a little bit about your background professionally and personally?
Sure. So I'm a pretty regular guy. I am born and raised on the East Coast. I'm from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Grew up. I was born in 92, so I'm, a 90s baby. Come from a good family, dysfunctional, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I excelled at sports. At the same time, I was kind of, supposed to go off to college and continue education. I got into drugs. So I didn't end up going, to college. I went to rehab and got sober. And, that's a big part of my life and who I am is recovery and, what I do to this day. Professionally, I do outreach for treatment centers. I've worked in all different levels in rehab. So I've been like your support staff. I've been a, operations manager, kind of done it all,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
When did your, let's take it back. Can you tell me a little bit more about your life and how your family system was and all of those good things? Good
the juicy stuff.
Yes.
Okay. So my family system, the dysfunction comes from my father was sick pretty much my entire life. So when I was 3 years old, my dad got diagnosed with cancer for the first time, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was in his brain, so it was very serious. To make a long story kind of short, with it came back every 2 years.
Okay.
His cancer would come out of remission. So, growing up like that, you kind of, I grew up in a neighborhood where family was really big. Mm-hmm. The idea of having a family, okay. You have Italian and Irish and this and that. And, I always remembered that I was the only child with a sick father, and my parents were also from the Midwest. Mm-hmm. So growing up on the East Coast, you're used to like generations and generations and generations of family. And so I was kind of like, like the black sheep in a sense, when I looked around it was, I didn't necessarily fit in. So that became like the mission. My father, he worked human resources in a steel mill, in a local steel mill, in Bucks County. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. They both come from very dysfunctional families. Yeah. And it's like, one thing to note is like, I never knew any of this while I was going through it.
Wow.
Like nowadays, since I've gotten sober, I've gotten into recovery. This is, all stuff I learned. So, yeah, when you're going through it, you don't have any vocabulary. Basically, for me, I just knew at some instinctual level, like things weren't okay in my family, and then it kind of, as I grew up and I hit my teenage years, it got a lot more intense. you kind of realize, like, I realized my dad was not getting better. He was getting worse. The toll that took on my mom, the toll it took on me, it was a lot. It was a lot. So, that's like a broad.
Yeah. How old were you when he passed away?
I was 21. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And he passed away. When he passed away, it was actually his 59th birthday. So it was tough. Luckily I was about 2.5 years sober for the first, I was in my first real stint of sobriety. So when he passed, passed seeing me sober, I was no longer, a criminal, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
At what age did you start drinking alcohol and taking drugs?
I've had to think about this a few times. The first time I drank, I was like 8 and I like stole the beer out of the fridge, I think one of my dad's friends like gave me it was like a Miller Lite or something like that. And I drank it, thought it was disgusting. And I was like, I don't know why these people would do this. When it really like started to take on I was like 12. So I grew up with all of my best friends in the neighborhood had older brothers and older sisters. So when I was 12, they were 14, 16, some were even in their 20s. And so, very quickly you're exposed to, the stuff you shouldn't be exposed to. So started drinking, started smoking weed. Shortly after, I think I was like 14 when I picked up Klonopin for the first time. I was like smoking weed with, the kids you don't bring, to your house. You don't bring them around your parents.
Yeah. Cause why.
Yeah. And it was like, hey, eat these and, it's going to, really put the effects of the weed. So, and then, do you want me to keep going into like all the,
whatever you feel like sharing.
You want all of it right now?
So you started drinking very young and taking drugs. You said 12, 13, 14.
Yeah. I first started I started to drink and smoke weed to fit in. Okay. Like it's a pretty classic.
Typical teenage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think the difference for me is that it never stopped. Not only did it not stop, it accelerated into hard drugs, and, towards the end of my teenage years, right before I got sober, it got really bad. It got as bad as it gets.
Yeah. Why do you feel for you it just got worse compared to your friends maybe that got over the teenage phase of trying things? What do you think for you? Or what was your trigger?
Right. So, and science backs this, but I do think I absolutely believe that there's a fundamental like genetic predisposition. Mm-hmm. I definitely believe that, I think the best way to explain it is if I didn't have the sick father, and just not a great, I wasn't comfortable in my home. My home did not feel like one. If I didn't have that stuff, I probably would have taken sports to college, went to college, blah, 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 blah. But I guarantee if I had the genetic predisposition, mm-hmm. I would have ended up doing, cocaine at a bar or whatever, Yeah. And it would have stuck then. So either way, I think that's the real difference between, what I call like a normie, Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a genetic thing, and there's not much more to it. How I found out for myself was, I think everybody everybody listening who's sober or in recovery, whether it's mental health or, substance, alcohol, you hit a point where you just kind of know. For me, I went through a ton of arrests, a ton of stealing from people that I did not want to steal from. I always share that wherever I went, I left it worse than the way I found it. Okay. So you live like that long enough. And I've always been, kind of, not to toot my own horn, but I'm not an idiot. I'm very conscious of my behavior and, what I do and don't do. So after, it was four actual arrests, from the time I was 14 to 18, and I can't even count, how many probation violations I had as a kid. I just woke up and I was just kind of I wanted to stop and I could not. I absolutely couldn't. I had done all the excuses, hey, I'm not gonna, throughout my teenage years, Oxycontin was my thing. Okay. I had dabbled with heroin, but I did not use a needle as a teenager. For me, and a lot of the people around my age group, if they're either in recovery or, God forbid you're not yet, whatever. If you were doing opiates in the around 2005 to 2010, that Oxy 80s were discontinued. And when that happened, that's when everyone switched to heroin. Okay. And I knew that was a wake up call for sure.
Was that your rock bottom, do you think?
I wouldn't say that's my rock bottom. I think my rock bottom came a little bit later. So I got sober for a little bit. After I first dabbled with heroin, I got sober. Okay. I had the 2.5 years, my dad passed away, and I white knuckled it to the 3-year mark, and then I got high. That run that I had after throwing away the 3 years of sobriety, that was hell on earth. I took it 30 days of just balls to the wall, getting high, robbing, stealing, fighting, et cetera, et cetera. That was probably the lowest point. But as far as for me, knowing I had a problem just came from I woke up and I was just I was finally, I didn't have any more lies left. I can't remember what I was watching, but the character said, I finally told my lifetime limit of lies, okay. And that was it. And that was kind of how I felt. So I hit that point and I still got high for years. So
when did you really stop?
When I really stopped was, it was my final arrest. That's what stopped me. Nowadays I'm actually grateful for that. If you ask me, this was 12, it was about 11, 12 years ago. So if you asked me back then, I still been yeah, sobriety's great, but I still hate the cops and, all that. But, no, nowadays I'm really grateful for it. So I got arrested right after I turned 18. What happened is I was, like I said, I was on juvenile probation. And when you turn 18, they have to let you off. As long as you're not in a facility, you're not locked down, you get off. And I knew that. So, I was ready. My probation officer came to the house. I signed the paperwork and I just, started going crazy. I was selling a lot of drugs at the time to support my habit. And, 3 days, it was 3 days after my 18th birthday. The cops raided my parents' house. So I was dead asleep. I woke up to my mom banging on my bedroom door. The house is surrounded. There's police all over, and my mom is like a very sweet lady, God bless her. Yeah. And she was just like, freaking out. For whatever reason, I, leave it up to God. All the drugs that I was, basically had, I left at a friend's house the night before. I only had a little bit on myself that I was going to use to not be sick. Mm-hmm. So, cops came into the house, turned my parents' house upside down. I was, thought I was, Scarface. I'm like screaming at them, "You're not going to find anything." And so they didn't find anything. I didn't get arrested right then. 2 weeks later, I asked it was one of my best friends at the time, his girlfriend, for a ride to the store. Turns out that she had gotten caught with drugs, I guess that I had given her a couple weeks before. And she was working with the police. So
it was like a setup.
Yeah. God bless her, So I was riding in the car. We get pulled over, and I was on the way to the store to get cigarettes. We had no cigarettes. We get pulled over. Cop says, "I'm pulling you over because you flicked a cigarette butt out the window." I'm like, I don't, I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Didn't make sense.
And this is the lead detective of the narcotics unit in my town, who I know on a first name basis. And it was kind of like that moment where I was like, my stomach dropped, and I knew something was going to happen. And all of a sudden, he pulls this girl out of the car that she was driving. She pulls out, from her like waistline of her pants, some drugs that I had given her, and hands it to the police officer, points at the car. I'm watching this through the rearview mirror, and it really just, once that happened, I got pulled out. I got arrested. A magic, pen tube with residue came from under the seat that I was sitting in, that was not mine. So I ended up with like possession of drug paraphernalia. It was like delivering medicines not prescribed, just kind of some, bullshit charges. Yeah. But that was it. Like I fundamentally, like very, very deep down inside of myself, knew that if I didn't stop, it was really I was going to go to jail forever.
The next time it was going to be worse.
Yeah, it was just, that was it. So my parents gave me the ultimatum, either get the F out of our house or go to treatment. Okay. And so they came to me with, it was a brochure. It was like one of those paper brochures of like, it was California, it was Los Angeles. It's like
pretty
this
pamphlets.
Oh yeah,
Wonderful
pretty
life.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was 18. I was 18, and my birthday was coming up to turn 19, and I was like, I put it off for a couple weeks and use some more drugs, whatever, and then I went. And so that is that's the beginning of recovery. Truthfully, for me, I had been put in like juvenile facilities and like juvenile boot camp programs. And, if anybody listening's ever been in those, that they're not rehabs. They're like, just like, they just abuse teenagers. That's like all it is. It's awful. But yeah, I show up to this treatment center, and, it is the same model as, the types that I, work with now. Mm-hmm. And you're viewed as not a criminal, not, this like person who just doesn't have enough willpower. You're viewed as like a hurt human being. Okay. Right. For me, that was huge, that was huge. I was so used to handcuffs. You're not good enough. What the fuck happened to you? You used to be this great kid, and now you're this. And so you start to believe that stuff, you start to believe that stuff. And for me, I got treated very, very, very well. Like Mike, do you need anything? Are you hungry? Are you, can we?
It's the basic needs.
Yeah, man. And oh my God, the difference it made, right?
Yeah.
I sat there and I had my 19th birthday in that treatment center. And to be honest, I didn't plan on staying sober. I was like, I just wanted the heat off my back. I didn't like sobriety to me was like, oh God,
why?
How? It's not possible. But yeah, I just had such a good experience. And, I was on, what happened with the charges was I got put on a program in Penn. I don't know if they still do it, but it was called ARD. And so you're on 2 years of supervised probation,
Okay.
Which honestly probably saved my life, because I'd be lying if I said during the first 2 years of that sobriety, I didn't want to, relapse or, engage in, criminal activity. Okay. The guys that, it's funny because they saw me get married earlier this year. They still remember me when I was like a little,
Really?
wannabe thug from the East Coast, and
A
yeah.
Rebellious teen.
Yeah. So.
I'm sure they were happy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty full circle. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll get to that.
How long have you been sober today?
Today, I just celebrated 7 years on September 9th.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And kind of like I said, that comes after having 3 years before. So like out of the last, 11 years, I've been sober like 10, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. That's still a lot.
Yeah.
I know you guys have to start over the count.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it still counts.
Some people don't, I'm one who does.
Yeah?
I start over the count. I'm honest with myself.
I thought that was like the rule.
Yeah.
It's optional.
I think it should be. Some people view it as optional.
Like, it's a whole just other, a little hurdle there.
I think we could do a whole other episode on that.
What would you say? What would you say is the hardest part of staying sober? Make you think a little.
Yeah. If it's nowadays, if I'm being honest, I never thought that I would live this long. I figured if I did, I would be in like Vegas or Atlantic City, just living a fast life. Mm-hmm. For me, it's really kind of continuing learning how to be kind of like mundane, like enjoying being a husband, like working a full-time job, being salaried, paying taxes. There's no like adrenaline. Hustles. There's no, shortcuts. There's no like it's really like part of my recovery. And this doesn't have to be for everybody, but for me, I rely on integrity, rigorous honesty is what, we say in the 12-step programs. So, excuse me. The hardest part is just being content with all of that. Like if I tell a white lie, I go and clean it up. If I did something wrong, there's no like, hey, tough, deal with it. What are you going to do? I have to like, for my own stability, I have to be very, very, very accountable.
I can imagine how that can be very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. For a person.
Yeah.
Look, if I'm speaking, at like a 12-step meeting, or I'm speaking to, whether it's a family or, potential person who wants to come into treatment, I'm very candid about who I am. I would love to like tell the audience that I'm just this wonderful person naturally, but I'm not, and I'm at a point in my recovery where I can admit that. Mm-hmm. To my core, I'm very selfish. I'm very self-centered. I don't see the world necessarily, And let me be clear too. If I'm not mindful of my recovery, I become that person, sober or not sober. And if I allow that to happen, very shortly after, I will relapse. That's kind of the way it works. If you engage, in old behaviors, all that stuff, eventually it's going to catch up to you, so, yeah.
So what would you say is the easiest part of staying sober?
I would say probably the rewards.
Okay.
Like as much as I used to, again, I believe in honesty. As much as I used to enjoy kind of living a fast life, because you can really kind of control things and, get what you need when you want it. As much as I enjoyed that, you are never, ever satisfied. Ever. Even at, when things were quote unquote working out, when I was making a lot of money, when I was, had the girls and the friends and everything that comes along with, that life, you still go to sleep empty. Like nowadays I sleep like a baby. I enjoy the little things. Like I'm very excited when I wake up the next day. That it's the little things. It's the little things.
Very grateful.
Yeah.
Day to
really.
day.
Yeah, exactly.
Normal, mundane.
Yeah. All the little stuff. Great humility and like gratitude are like the best things for me. They make it easy.
Yeah.
Because I can enjoy just like having a car to drive home in and now it's like I don't have a flashy car anymore. I just like downgraded to a old Camry. Okay. And I'm actually more comfortable in it. Funny
I'm sure
enough.
You're saving a lot in gas too.
A lot, yeah.
It's super expensive, so it's probably a good decision.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah. So, the easiest things about staying sober is the friends you make and what you get from it. The work to, and I should be clear too for anybody listening, like this is me at 7 years. This is not me at 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, a year. There was not many rewards then.
Okay.
I want to be clear about that. I've always, there's like a saying in 12-step meetings when you're speaking and you want to speak to the person in their first 30 days and the person in their last 30 days, meaning the one who's been sober a long time, but maybe is about to relapse, or the person who's brand new. When I was brand new, if I heard, some of what I'm saying now, it would be like a foreign language. That's bullshit, man.
It wouldn't make sense.
It's not real. And, but yeah, if you were asking me these questions when I was early in sobriety, I would have completely different answers. But nowadays the hard part is, I'm now married. I have a mortgage. I have like high levels of like accountability, You're
responsible.
Yeah. And like, if you had asked me that in my first 30 days, it's like hard not to steal something when you go in a store. It's hard not to, you
were just driven out of impulse.
People. Yeah. Very animalistic.
You weren't thinking of the consequences. You were just kind of doing it for the immediate reward, which was the adrenaline.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of aspects in your life have changed since you've been sober. Did your relationships with family, friends, all of that changed?
Oh my God, you have no idea. Family, I was never really too close with my extended family, but they know I'm sober. They love me. When we do get together, it's great. I'm no longer, nobody worries about me now at the family functions. When I was a kid, it was kind of like, is Mike going to raid the liquor cabinet and ruin Thanksgiving, that kind of stuff. my relationship with my mom that's the most important one to me, her and my wife, I guess, obviously, but my relationship with my mom is very special because for a long time, I thought I was never going to have one with her. I put my family through hell, and although dysfunctional, they were extremely loving people. Okay. My dad, my mom loved me a ton. Did they always do it in the right ways? No. But that was a relationship that I thought I had just, I was always the apple of her eye, but I remember at a certain point, she told me she wished I was never born, and I could tell she meant it in that moment. Okay. And that was right before I moved to Los Angeles. So it took me years to really establish like that first layer of like relationship, which is like, saying I love you again and meaning it, and like being allowed back to the house without like that, constant concern and are you okay? Is he okay? Yeah. Like how's he behaving? Now, I mean, I can talk to my mom about literally anything, whether it's love, my relationship with my wife, money, work, friends, her life, right? Like now it's also about her life. That's the best. That's to kind of sum all of that up. Being a person that now all of my friends, family, etc. call on for help is like, it's like a drug. Yeah. It's like a great high.
It's very rewarding.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I never thought that I would be here.
What can someone do if they suspect a loved one might be using drugs or be an alcoholic? What would be your recommendation? I know everybody's
like one of those
different.
Answers, right? It depends. Yeah.
Yes, I know it depends. Yeah. Or maybe talk from your experience.
No, I got you. I got you. So what I would say is it really depends on how they respond to you. Like if I'm speaking to like the moms and dads and the brothers and the sisters, look, you got to kind of allow your loved one to realize it for themselves. Mm-hmm. The only time that becomes dangerous is when there's like drugs that they could overdose being used. I think needs to be a sense of urgency in that case. But if I had like general advice, just like seek professional help, seek professional help. And also, yeah, I think this is a huge part is own your own shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Pardon my French, but like own your own shit, lead by example. Okay. Chances are whether it's your kid or your spouse or whoever, a family member is using drugs to a degree that, you're like listening to a podcast looking for help, like just own your own stuff and lead by example. That encourages that person to like when you're, I'll tell you this, when I used to be in the system as a teenager, it was always interrogation and, your drug test results state this and, blah, blah.
You're like, I know.
You're like, yeah. What, are you perfect, man? Yeah. Are you guys, that's the way someone who's using looks at life is like, okay, yeah, chances are they're not that bad of a person. Mm-hmm. So they're using to cope with pain, so I would just say, view them as a person who is in a lot of pain and own your own crap, and you will be amazed at what they do. If you can admit, hey, you know what? I wasn't there for you as a kid. I worked all the time, regardless of the circumstances, I wasn't there for you, or, God, it must've been hard, going to that school or moving, whatever it might be. You know, you'll know your loved one's issues, you know. That really encourages a person to get vulnerable, to get open and honest and want help.
Yes,
you know?
I agree 100%. That could be key with anyone.
Yeah.
And especially with parents, it's really hard sometimes to own it because you have to be this authoritative person.
Yeah.
But we're all human beings.
Yeah. And they've hurt, you know, for the listeners, like you've been hurt by, you know, the addict or the alcoholic. That is very valid. You know, I'm not saying disregard all of that, but understand the solution doesn't lie in like, you know, look at all you've done and all you know, it's just like, listen, you know, just stay solution based. And too, like, if you don't know how to talk to them, don't continue to try. Just seek professional help. There is people like me, and like thousands of others, you know, they're now all over social media. Like we have, it's 2022. We have a broad array of help available and good help.
A lot more people are talking about it too.
Yeah.
Do you think the stigma surrounding the label has a lot to do why people don't seek for treatment or seek professional help? I know it's changed a lot in the past 5 to 10 years. So I know before it was really bad. I feel like now more people are talking about it and being open about it, just like you, and willing to share their story. Yeah.
Reason I smile is I there's going to be people that don't agree with me. Don't care.
That's fine.
I really don't care. So I believe that people don't stop because they're still in immense amount of pain. It's not, I don't think stigma necessarily causes as much like hush hush as people think it does. I'm going to be a person that says like, listen, as a teenager, I robbed, beat up. I was not a good person when I was using. I deserved a stigma, you know? I also deserved an understanding that there was reasons behind that I'm not just like, you know, sociopath criminal.
Yeah, you weren't born like that.
You know, yeah. And like, there's reasons why, you know, but I don't want the world, you know, I'm not the person who's like, you know, baby the addict. You know, I believe that really keeps someone sick.
Yeah, like you don't want to enable an addict, but you want to hold them accountable, yet be a little empathetic about the situation or try to get to know them. Yeah,
there's a very sweet middle, you know.
Very fine line.
And I think too, that's where professional help comes in. Is like I have been on both sides of this fence. I've helped, honestly, I'm probably in the thousands by now of like families and people, guys, girls who I've helped get sober. I developed my understanding through experience. The families who listen to this or the loved ones, whatever, you know, you're not going to be an expert. So don't try to be. You know, one thing I'll talk about, I'll try and be quick, is
no rush.
Everybody wants to be like a mindful guru nowadays. You know, right?
I'm not trying to be.
No, you're
for the
great.
record.
You're great. But like, look, if you are a true mindful guru, you will have humility. Humility says go get help from professional. Like if I'm, I always kind of say to people, like, the last person was like he was a finance guy, right? And I said to him, I was like, if I was getting better, if I was refinancing my mortgage, I would go straight to you for help. I wouldn't tell you how I'm going to refinance my mortgage, right? So with your loved one, listen to what I'm trying to give you, you know?
Exactly.
I believe that people, just like seek professional help to help your loved ones. It's not a bad thing to, allow us in. Yeah.
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 That
Something I
makes
deal
complete
with.
sense. No, it makes complete sense. To close our conversation, what one piece of advice would you offer to addicts who might be listening to this podcast right now? So we talked about the loved ones on that side.
Yeah.
If you're a family member, a friend. What about if you're an addict and you're considering seeking help, or maybe they don't trust themselves enough, or like you said in the beginning, you didn't believe you could go through with it,
Right.
but you did.
Right. What saved my life was staff inside of treatment centers. And too, when I was a kid, inside of like the juvenile programs that I got sent to, it was always like a certain staff member. So get vulnerable. Look, I always say to someone who's like still using and still like, and you're talking to somebody who down to my core knows the suffering of it, like the worst of the worst. It sucks. And like, there really is a way out. There really is. Is it hard? Yes. But like, you lean on people, you know, you're
good
not
functional people.
Right. Yeah. That's key. But yeah, lean on people, like, and reach out, you know. I think we'll drop contact information, whatever. Sure. Like, if this was pretty brief, I didn't get into a lot of my story, but you know, if you hear anything you like reach out to me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, come handcuff you and bring you to treatment. I'll be a friend, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just get vulnerable. That's what I would say.
And you're still active. You keep going to this 12-step programs.
Absolutely.
Is that something you ever stop?
No. I have a firm belief that if I stop, if I don't maintain my recovery, if I don't behave, right? Like, it's going to come. The day is going to come. I'm going to, think I can drink like a normal person, or, whatever it's going to be. Yeah, the day will come. So yes, I will always work on myself. Sometimes I'm better at that than other times. Like, sometimes my physical health is better. Sometimes my mental health is better. But like, at the end of the day, I'm learning how to
navigate or cope with that.
Yeah, and just live in the middle, man. Just live in the middle. I don't got to be special anymore. I don't have to be hot shit.
Yeah.
Like I used to think I needed to be.
Well, you were also 18.
Yeah.
So you were very young.
Yeah. So.
No, well, thank you for coming and sharing your story. Yeah. It was amazing. And I hope for anybody that is listening that you were inspired and it gave you a little hope. And again, we're going to put his info on the description, so feel free to reach out. Yeah. Mike's got you.
I got you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.